gaan naar onze volgende spreker, de laatste voor de pauze. En we gaan van horloges naar Guantanamo Bay. Nelleke, who's always reading these stories in magazine, I think it was that magazine, Annabelle, it's a Swiss magazine actually, where she read a story about our next speaker. And she is the sole courtroom artist who worked at the Guantanamo Bay naval-based tribunals. She's been there since 2006, and as all cameras and recording equipment is forbidden during the trials there, her drawings are actually the only visual record of the events that take place there. So we wondered, how's life at that place? How is it to work as a woman between all these men, only male prisoners there? How does she work? Well, many questions, and we're very happy she's here with us to answer them, to tell her about her work. She's from America. Welcome, courtroom artist and illustrator Janet Hamlin.
A grand entry. Well, thank you for having me here at PINC today. I'm probably the only artist who's been art directed by a terrorist. I will launch into that story shortly, but it is one of the challenges that has been mine working in Guantanamo Bay. Originally, I began my life as an artist illustrating, and one of my clients was the Associated Press, and an art director there liked the way that I drew emotion and expression and said, I want to put you into a courtroom. So I started out on a very famous murder trial in Connecticut in 2002, but as it turned out, I should backstep. In 2001, I was living in Brooklyn, and I witnessed 9/11. My house shook with the second explosion. I walked to my roof, and I watched the towers fall and the ash fall, and I had a 3-page document fall in my backyard and papers fall in my front yard. And I never in a million years would have thought that 5 years later, I would find myself going to Guantanamo to sketch. But as it turned out, the Associated Press needed an artist, and he said, you can do it. So my first visit, and I thought my only visit, I was told I wasn't allowed to draw the faces. And a court artist, their whole job is to draw the person who's on trial. And let me explain too. A lot of artists, you'll notice court art is on brown or toned paper, and that's because we need to draw quickly. Our models are not standing still. So I have to bring the lights out and the darks out very quick, and for me, courtrooms are mostly brown. So I use a brown paper, and I'm grabbing everything I can, spur of the moment. I don't know how much time I have. And sometimes, and in this case, since I couldn't necessarily draw the person's face, I chose to draw the audience, and in this case, it was the media and the human rights lawyers. Or, in this case, I drew the reflection in the monitor too. So it's finding a composition that tells the story quickly and effectively. The second time I was sent down was to draw an Australian detainee, but they changed my seat, and I found myself sitting behind him, which was not ideal. So obviously, as you can see, I had Cousin It. Nobody had seen him for 5 years. He had this long hair, so at least I got this drawing, but I, at break, said, may I change my seat? And they said, absolutely not, you can't, sorry. And I said, well then, my job is over and I'm leaving. And they said, wait, we'll work this out. So they did, and I was able to draw this. Well, another aspect of drawing in Guantanamo is every one of my drawings gets reviewed by a security officer who signs off. And I was told by my Pentagon escort, my joint task officer, listen, I think you can draw the face. So I finished my drawing, and I went ahead and drew his face, and he took it. And I said, no, it hasn't been signed off. He said, no, I'm telling you it's okay, I'm gonna take it. So he runs off, and I'm staying behind to get my next drawing. And in 15 minutes, there are two large men standing by me, very angry. And they said, you know, you've broken the rules. And thankfully, everybody behind me said, no, she was told this is okay. So what happened is the horse was out of the barn, and the horse could not be backed up. So now the faces could be drawn. And he ended up doing a guilty plea. I ended up staying and we had our first military commissions from start to finish in that 6-day period. And as you can see, the jury, the faces, oops, whoa, that was not my intention. Okay, well, you can see that the faces here are blurred, and this is always the case with the jury. But it was a very important event, and it ended up making quite a bit of news. Then they kept sending me back. You can see this is Osama bin Laden's driver, and part of my mission, people say, how long do you have? Sometimes I have 5 minutes, sometimes I have an hour, sometimes I have 4 sketches going on at once. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll lay in with a brown line, sort of a blueprint that I can build off of, or I'll think of a composition. What is the story? Who are we talking about? But also, what are they showing on monitors that will also tell the story? We see Osama bin Laden's driver with a chart on the monitor by him that shows his position to Osama bin Laden. And that's not handed out to the media, so this is a way to get it. On the right, we see a secret agent whose face I could not draw. And on the bottom are the stickers with the signature saying that these are approved to be moved out. The next case was Omar Cotter, who was a teenager, a Canadian, who was found almost dead on a battlefield. And they found he was alive, and they found a DVD in all the items that showed him learning how to make a road bomb at 14. So it's this kind of green night video. So I had to capture that, but also to capture as neutrally as possible, but truthfully as possible. I let the body language tell the story, and he was covering his eye. He had been wounded. I don't know what he was feeling, but we know he's feeling something. A lot of times court artists might be criticized for putting their own opinions in things, and I try as much as I can to let the story tell itself in the drawings. The rules change every time I go. You saw that I could draw a jury in the earlier trial, but this time the judge said no jury, no silhouette, nothing. But in any court case, the person is talking to the jury, pointing it out. So instead I drew large numbers in a sort of sarcastic but important way. You know, I just drew them as numbers with their military service in a band at top. And what they do when they pick a jury is to look across the whole service, all different types, Air Force, Naval, and they select officers and they bring them in and they sit in court. And here we have military lawyer with a small version of the battlefield showing where Omar was found and describing the scene. What was really poignant to me was the widow of a medic who was killed. Now, Omar is accused of throwing a hand grenade over a wall that killed this medic. It's hard to say if he did or didn't, but in this trial they're saying he did, and his widow is reading a letter from her children to him. And he's reacting. And then he got up on the stand and he apologized. He ended up, and in between this, I'm also drawing scenes whenever possible. When everybody's leaving, I'm staying, because the entry, the exit, the in-between is when you see some of the most real and intimate moments, the most telling moments, when he's just sort of sitting and pondering how he's being brought in. His case is pretty well known. He's in Canada, freed with his lawyer. He has to stay with some monitoring, but you can read up on it. I won't go into it right now. But what I will go into is that when I was sent back again, it was to draw the 9/11 accused. And in this case, they made a whole new courtroom. And that little figure in the back is me. Anybody watching the trial, anybody reporting on the trial, if they go to the actual courtroom, we're behind soundproof glass. We're hearing everything at a 40-second delay because the same man that signs off can also press a button to make white noise. So if somebody's saying something they don't want us to hear, we hear and we see a red flashing light. But this is a challenge for an artist because I'm drawing and I'm hoping, in a court in the US, I'm sitting really close, I'm listening, I'm letting my ears tell me. And here I can't do that. So, I'm kind of drawing with my eyes and trying to capture what I can, but hearing it 40 seconds later and with this glass bouncing back. So it's extra challenging. The blue curtain is where the people who have lost members of their families in 9/11 sit. Sometimes they want me to draw them, and so I'm looking for a scene all the time, and I've been able to sit behind them and draw their perspective. That's my job. How can I best convey the story, and from all viewpoints? Well, the first time I went, as you saw from the earlier picture, I'm sitting way in back, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who claims to have masterminded 9/11, CNN said, "We want a big portrait of him." Well, this is the head I'm drawing, and so I'm quickly drawing it, and I'm thinking, that's not quite right, but I don't have much time because I have five men to draw. So I throw it on the ground, I go to my next drawing, then we go to break, and I go to get my drawing signed off, and they said, you can't take Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He really doesn't like the way you drew him. So we're gonna keep the drawing up here. And meanwhile, I want you to go down, print out his FBI or whatever photo for reference, come back through. And another thing is, every time you enter and exit the courtroom, you're going through, it's like you're boarding a plane twice. Metal detectors, everything else. So I pre-sharpen, I have no metal with me, no nothing. So I'm going through, I go down to where the journalists are, and they're, "Where's that drawing? We need to shoot it." And I'm saying, well, sorry, apparently I didn't do a good job, so I will be back shortly. And this is where it became a big story that the terrorists could art direct me. And as embarrassing as it is, I actually drew on top of that and did a better drawing. So it was in fact a better drawing. That's the second drawing I did with the 5 accused. One of the reasons I work in pastel is it's an opaque medium. The people are moving. There's many obstacles. As you can see, there's many things between me and the scene. In this case, when the judge talked to Khalid, he was sitting, I had him drawn sitting, and he stood up. Oh boy, this is a big deal. He's standing up to talk to the judge. So you can see that sort of frenzied, opaque color around him, which highlights movement, but covers up the earlier drawing effectively. Another very difficult thing is when I'm sitting in the back, I'm seeing 3/4 of these, little faces. So I made a pitch to the Pentagon, and I said, look, how about if I have soundproof headphones, and you can have 2 secret security guys, and let me sit in the main room, because when I was in the earlier courtroom, my drawings were much more intimate, much more lush. And they said, no, you don't have the clearance for that. But we'll take you to a separate building entirely, and we'll give you this lovely split screen view. And you take what you can get, and it's how I can get these. So when you see any faces like that, I'm in another building, drawing from that. This is also an indication of where I ran out of time. And you can see the brown line lay-in, which actually kind of works better because it would be visually chaotic if I had put all the values in anyway. And as we heard earlier, color is very effective in a court artist. While trying to be neutral, I also want to detail out or drive your eye to the most important elements. So you see the soldiers in the back. I can't draw them, but I still want them to be there. So, there are ways in which I just fade out or focus in and visually edit without making it untruthful. This is a break. This is a quick sketch during a break. They're moving, they're praying in court, they're rolling out their rugs. And that was just a quick sketch I did, thinking nothing of it. And it ends up being used quite often because you're not going to see this anywhere else but Guantanamo, I think. These are just a few more examples of honing in and editing and trying to compose. I have a rectangle, but I'm trying to fit a really large scene. So sometimes I'll force perspective, or like in this case. And another point was somebody said, oh boy, fun times for you. The 5 detainees decided that they were going to exercise their right on the second day to not show up. And I said, well, wait a minute. We all have to show up. This is an opportunity to show the entirety of this view. And so I was able to negotiate a far left corner above everybody and get this very complex scene that shows the 5 empty chairs, but the many full chairs. And, you know, at the bottom you see the chains, which if they're ever unruly, they could be shackled, which they so far have not been. But, you know, I was able to get these little details. Those monitors that you see, there is a separate media room in an old blimp hangar that the journalists work out of that has internet. And some of them want to tweet live, but they can't bring their recording devices or anything in. So what they're seeing is what's on those monitors in the hangar where they write out of. And Carol Rosenberg, who is, Miami Herald sends her to every trial. She's been the most consistent journalist, and she does a live, you know, blog. And if you're ever interested, the AP and Reuters, they all cover it, but the most comprehensive will be on the Miami Herald website if you ever want to follow what's going on, because currently there are still 8 or 9 cases, including the 9/11 pretrial hearings, going on in staggered ways with delays because there's FBI spying issues, there's cancer-causing issues that they've found. So it's moving, as you know, very slowly, but it is moving. One of the things I did to stay warm in between is to do these little sketches. And as it turned out, some of these little things that I was just doing, you know, in between, they'll take us maybe to see inside the prison, or I'll walk around Guantanamo. And I kept these for myself, but they ended up having some pretty important information, and people expressed interest. On the far right is one of the chairs that we strap the detainees who are hunger striking, and we thread a hose down and put Ensure in them, and basically force feed them to keep them alive. They give the detainees access to soccer games. Photographers aren't allowed to shoot anybody face forward, but my drawings were so loose that they let me kind of draw these figurative works so you can get a sense of what's going on. So these are just a few of my personal sketches. And here finally is an example, if you're a journalist, or I'm considered a journalist, we sleep in a tent on the runway, the same runway that houses the portable court. And this below is the hangar, the blimp, that's been modified to have little writing where the internet and the writing and the monitors are. That little building there is where you see all the interviews with the lawyers afterwards, with the blue curtain behind and the medallions, all built for the hearings. And then finally, I never set out to do this, but then again, I never expected to be continuing to go, and the journalists all encouraged me, saying, you have sequential artwork of everything, and not every same media person has gone down there and used your artwork, but let's put it in one place so we can see it all in one place. And we'll write articles and we'll get you access. And so I got access to Salim Hamdan, who was the driver, and asked him, what did you feel like to be in court? So his opinions, the prosecution is in there, the journalists are in there, and it's become a learning tool, which I'm very, very proud of. And it's something that our future generation can refer to, hopefully. So this book is something that was a joint effort. And that's me sketching. I have another minute here where I've brought a couple of my originals. So you can see the size of the work. And you can see the stickers where they're all signed off. So you can get a sense of the scope. These aren't in the book. They were done after the book came out because, of course, this has all taken much longer than I expected. But you can see that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is now wearing camouflage because he feels he's a warrior in court. And we afford them the right for self-expression, as we saw that in my art direction experience. And then here is the family members looking through at them. So there's a few originals that hopefully I can have out there on the floor where you can kind of see them somewhere. And I will welcome any of your questions during the rest of the day if any of you have them. But it's certainly been an honor, and I thank all of you for this experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet, and it is an honor to have you with us today. What a wonderful work you do.